What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip and welcome back to another video. So, I have decided to make this video right after watching Gozyuger episode 48. Yes, after watching the show on the same day. So, I'm going to basically recap episodes 46 to 48 in this video. I know other Toku tubers have talked about Gojuger episodes 46 to 47, but I am going to include episode 48, so there's definitely going to be a spoiler warning here, so with that said, I recommend that you catch up on the latest Gojuger episodes, especially episode 48 if you could find it already, before continuing on with this video, because again, there are going to be some heavy spoilers ahead. So again, this is my reminder to get caught up, or rather, go ahead and catch up on the latest episodes. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now, as of episode 46, so the Gojugers finally have all of the Sentai rings. At least Ryugi has the Kaku Ranger ring. So now, one thing they have one problem. Who is going to be the final winner? Now, obviously, we see this coming a long way ahead, right? So we have seen kind of bit of it in episode 29 when Ryugi challenged Hoeru for the Sentai rings and ended up losing, and he was, temporarily ejected from the team. But he did come back the next episode, basically. So, yeah. Now the Gojugers have to decide, which which one of them is going to win, and they decided to have some sort of a tournament, and they decided which pairs are gonna fight each other with rock, paper, scissors. So by doing this, we have three pairs of uh, teams, or I guess again the tournament is decided, so we ended up with three pairs. So first up, we have Sumino and Kinjiro, which we're going to talk about first, and then next up would be Ryugi and Rikuo, and finally we have Hoeru and Mashiro. So let's talk about Sumino and Kinjiro first, because Sumino decided that, hey, I'm gonna volunteer that, Kinjiro and I would go ahead. So we're gonna talk about them first, and this is basically the plot of episode 46. So again, the overall plot is that Sumino and Kinjiro fight each other for their rings. Now, there's one problem though. Kinjiro is very reluctant to fight Sumino. Why? Because up until now, we do know that Kinjiro's wish is to stay young forever and, keep on partying. But at this point, Kinjiro realizes, what does it actually even mean to be a party people? So, again, he kind of, stays out quite a bit. Like, okay, like, I'm gonna try to sit this one out quite a bit, I think that's what's going through Kinjiro's mind, because, compared to him, Sumino has a very clear objective. She is very much motivated to bring her sister back. We do know that at this point, Otto is still unconscious, and therefore, Sumino has definitely a lot more motivation behind her actions, and again, she is, she has more desire to fight. Now, compare that to Kinjiro, who feels that, because he doesn't even know, or he doesn't fully understand what being a party people is, so he feels that being half-hearted at that point while fighting Sumino is not going to be fair. Now, interestingly, Shining Knife and Sweet Cake step in to help Kinjiro out. So they help him train, and there's one scene So when they go back to Kinjiro's house, actually at this point, Kinjiro reverted back to being Joji, and his grandson uh, took him home. Like, where have you been all this time, Grandpa? Like, what the frick? Didn't you realize that your grandpa has been your classmate all along? Like, I thought they made it clear in episode 6, right? So, anyways, so they take Kinjiro home, or at this point, he is Joji, and while talking to Shining Knife and Sweet Cake, so Joji pulls out an old photo album showing him and his wife Fusako during their high school days, and when they got married, and then many years later as they have aged. you know Looking at old photos made Kinjiro, or rather Joji, realize that in a way he had always been a party people of sorts. He realizes that being a party people means that you do live your life to the fullest, and live life as you wanted, I guess. So, anyways, looking at old photos made him realize what being a true party people meant, and now he's resolved to fight Sumino. Now, one thing that you would notice, like in the fight, before the actual battle, Sumino versus Kinjiro. So, one thing that you would notice in the episode, or rather in the video quality, or something like that, Kohaku Shida was heavily edited into the scene. Therefore, we could assume that Maya Imamori had shot a few episodes again before she was removed from the show. So we do know that she should have been around up until that point, because again, like, you can clearly see how superimposed Kohaku is onto that scene, because the lighting around her feel felt so unnatural. So, anyways, with that out of the way, so Kinjiro and Sumino do their battle. In the end, Sumino wins. So she gets all of the Sentai rings, even the Goju Eagle ring. But Kinjiro, after the battle, still stayed young. So this would actually be revealed in episode 47, when Hoeru asks, "Wait, you've already lost your Sentai ring, why are you still young?" And Kinjiro reveals that, this happens off screen though. He said that he made a deal with Tegasword to, uh, or at least Tegasword gave him an opportunity to stay young at least until this whole battle is finished. So there you go. But so that explains why Kinjiro still looks young despite having already lost his Sentai ring. Now, speaking of episode 47, we have Ryugi versus Riko. Now, this makes a lot of sense because we see that even before the show started, or at least events before the show, Ryugi and Riko have been the first ones to form some sort of an alliance, regarding the Gozyugers, and, like Hoeru and the other Gozyugers just came in after that. So, again, they go a really long way, and it makes sense that they do fight each other. So, episode 47, we already start with Riko versus Ryugi, but they're so evenly matched. It was a draw. Ryugi hatches an idea, and we know that Riko's wish is to regain his number one idol spot. So, Ryugi, using the Bakugami wealth, tries to create a music video, but it ends up really, really weird with Tegasword in it, Yeah, it just felt weird. You should watch the episode to see how weird it is, but anyways. So, Ryugi tries to, win this battle by creating a music video for Rikuo and mm, I guess trying to help Rikuo regain that number one idol spot once again without having to battle or something like that. But it doesn't work because again that music video is just so weird. So Bouquet steps in, being the fan that she is, like she uh, has her own idea on how to make Riko the number one idol again. So she starts handing out like flyers, I guess for some like concert for Riko and whatnot. But what happens is Bouquet gets ends up having a following of her own, you know, and she gets some fans herself, which is funny because like Nico just gets pushed aside when uh, Bouquet was actually trying to make him popular again, so it kind of backfires in a way. But obviously, Bouquet, doesn't really want that attention. Like, if you would just follow Rikuo-sama instead of me, that's how Bouquet felt, even though she had just gained a few fans herself. And she created like this giant Rikuo throne, like a giant-sized version of her altar. So Rico was there, like charming the fans and whatnot. So again, it kind of works, but in the end, like it's still down to Rico versus Ryugi fighting each other with everything that they've got, and you know, Rico, while still not confident. He still has like self confidence issues after what had happened. The incident that made him lose his fans and why he's in this battle in the first place. You know, and Bouquet is cheering him on like a total cheerleader. So that's what she does, and I guess in a way like this isn't exactly what Bouquet says, but what she means here is that even though you lose all your fans, I'm still your number one fan. Like I'm always here for you. Just go get a room already, you two. You know what I'm saying. So yeah. Anyways, so Riko and Yugi still end up battling each other, but the outcome wasn't really shown. We do see, however, the next scene. So we skip to what seems to be Riku's concert, and he performs a new song. Now, what you would notice while Riku was performing on stage is that he no longer had his ring, and we switch back to the Tegasword Cafe, where it's there. Not necessarily in Yugi's possession, but uh, we can infer that Yugi was the winner of the battle. But even though Rico had lost his ring, he still got his wish, you know, to be back on the number one idol spot once again. So, or maybe he's still working his way to be number one idol again, but again, he no longer requires the ring uh, to be popular once again, and he still has Bouquet's support on top of that. So all's well that ends well for Rico at least. Now we move on to Mashiro versus Hoeru. Now, obviously, Hoeru being the main protagonist, he's definitely gonna win this battle. And thinking of it, we could end up with a three-way battle between Sumino, Ryugi, and Hoeru to decide the final winner. But we can scratch all that because that ain't happening. Now, what also happens in around episode 47, I guess. So we do know that in episode 45, right? So we go back to episode 45 a bit. So we are introduced to the third, or rather, I guess, the last general of the Cladis faction, aka the Calamity. So we are introduced to Vidar in episodes 45 to 46, but he is, of course, defeated by the Gozyugers. After his defeat, so Fire Candle, so, you know, decides to absorb Vidar's powers for himself, making him sort of a calamity himself, if that makes any sense. But either way, so now, uh, that's actually like the B-side story of episode 47. So, anyways, so Fire Candle, he decides to, try to get back his old comrades, even Tega Jun, but they all decide to, nah, we're just gonna live in peace. But again, Fire Candle decides that, okay, if you ain't gonna help me, I'll do things by myself, and you're all my enemies now. So Fire Candle's desire is to, well, we do know that he had this obsession with fighting Hoiru, all this time. But at this point, he decides that he wants to create a world where the Bryden can thrive. He loved his comrades, which is really, really admirable for him as a character. You can't hate the guy, really. But again, in order to do that, he has to destroy Earth. So again, this is why he decides to absorb the powers of the calamity for himself, specifically Vidar, even though he understands the risk that it entails. However, doing this awakens the final calamity, Rex. So, Rex is technically not death. So, we do know that the calamities are based on like the four horsemen of the apocalypse. But let me explain why Rex is actually different. So, uh, so we do know Pestis from the summer movie. So he is, of course, pestilence or disease, in a way. And then we have Bellum, who possessed, the Gushima, and then we have Vidar. So Bellum is based on the Horsemen of War. So Vidar is based on the Horsemen of Famine, but Rex isn't the Horseman of Death. Rather, all of the minions that were summoned were basically killed by, rangers throughout history, and they were the ones that represented death. It makes sense. So now we move on to episode 48, which is supposed to be Hoeru versus Mashiro, but we end up with a new enemy in the form of Rex. So, uh, Tegasword basically explains that Rex himself is a god, while Tegasword is the god of humanity, according to Tegasword himself. Rex is basically an even bigger god. So, according to Tegasword. But yeah, so that's what happens, right? So, Rex himself explains to Mashiro that he is an inevitable force. Well, we do see Rex as some sort of villain, right? He kind of rebukes that idea, or he kind of debunks that by saying that. Uh, so Rex claims that he himself is the embodiment of calamity, rather than a force of evil. He is a force of nature, where, he does explain that where there is light, there's darkness, where there's life, there's death, and, everything where there is like positivity, there's negativity, just to balance everything out, right? It makes sense. So the earth exists in this balance of like positive and negative energy again, like light and dark, life and death, and so on. So yeah, Rex explains that he is there as a force of nature, as he would say, like things happen, or like negative things happen just because he's there. He's not actively doing things, but because he is present. So, you know, again, calamities occur because he himself is the calamity. And even though, like, the other generals have been defeated, it doesn't mean that the calamities will go away. Even though Pestis is destroyed, disease still occurs. Bellum is defeated, people still fight each other. Vidar is defeated, people still experience hunger, and so on, right? Uh, but yeah, again, because Rex himself is there, you know, bad things will still happen because, you know, that's what nature dictates. So, anyways, now we focus on episode 48. So, again, the focus is on Mashiro this time, as, you know, he tries to battle Rex by himself. Now, we do know that Mashiro, again, was the former Goju Wolf, and with the help of Tegasword, so they have sealed the calamities, including Rex, and, you know, he ended up winning the number one battle and became the god that he claims to be. However, again, his powers right now did not really were not really enough to beat the Rex, you know, in one-on-one combat. So again, Rex appears before the other Gozyugers themselves, and, you know, he tries to uh, get Mashiro to his side. You know, basically what Rex says is that if you really want to, you know, uh, prevent everything here, why not become a true god? So by trying to get, you know, Mashiro to his side, like, Rex promises that Mashiro will have the power to actually become a god and, you know, prevent all of the bad stuff from happening by actually destroying this world and then recreate it, and then you do whatever you want, you know. That's basically what um, Rex was trying to push. That's the idea that Rex was trying to push into Mashiro's head. But Mashiro, again, having saved this world once before, says, "Nah, I'm not gonna do that." You know, like, uh, you can go suck it, basically. So Mashiro gains, like, an extremely incredible idea. So we look at Tega Naguru for a bit, aka Gudaburn. So if we go back to, like, episodes like 15, 16, you know, when uh, Goju Polar was introduced. So Gudaburn was originally created as Tega Naguru by Tega Jun. So, you know, by having a child with Tega Sword, if you know what I mean. So Gudaburn, aka Tega Naguru, was basically designed, or born rather, to destroy the world. And Mashiro hasn't forgotten that fact. So what he does is, using all the Sentai rings he has, so he tries to take that power of destruction from Gudaburn and absorb it into himself, creating this sort of, like, power up, basically. Now, temporarily, when Mashiro transformed into his Goju polar form, right? So we do see that there was actually like a change in color in his suit again, like for a few seconds. We do know that there's a Tega Naguru toy that was supposed to come out, or is it out already? Which is basically a different colored version of Goodiburn. Instead of like the white, ice blue, and like gold trims. So this Tega Naguru is basically black with some red trims on his body. And that's what happens for a few seconds, right? So so Goodiburn transforms, or rather the transformation device that Mashiro uses. So it does transform into this black and red form, and even the Goju polar suit for again this few seconds of transformation, changes into this black and red version before going back to normal. But again, this made Mashiro basically more powerful. So now, by absorbing the powers of destruction from Goodiburn, so he basically uses it to defeat Rex by himself. So yeah, he does eventually um, do that. Now, here's something that probably would shock you. So when Rex appears, right? So you would notice that in this episode, Sumino is absent. Okay. Now we we do see a bit of a battle here, between Rex and like Tegasword family, and Yugi was piloting Tegasword with Yo Tegasword power up, but after that, so it didn't end up well. So Ryugi steps out of the robot, and you know what happens? Rex snaps his fingers and Thanos's Ryugi out of the picture, right? So Ryugi just disintegrates in front of everyone, and of course, his Sentai rings were dropped. So everyone's shocked, and this is where you know Rex also reveals, like, he shows one of his fingers, and the Goju unicorn ring was on it. So we do see a flashback for a bit. So Sumino had encountered Rex apparently earlier in the episode. Again, we only see this through the flashback, but she wasn't able to defeat him, or she thought she defeated him, and snap. Sumino disintegrates, and she doesn't even, she's still in her Goju unicorn form, so we don't see any Kohaku Shida here. And then she just drops her, her rings, including the rings that she got from Kinjiro. So now, this is again more of the, like, behind the scenes. So we do know that Maya Imamori has basically shot more episodes before she was removed from the show. Again, uh, we do understand that this happens when, again, going back to episode 46, we know that Kohaku Shida was just superimposed onto Maya Imamori. Now, there was, again, like, there were talks that Sumino would be removed from the show earlier. So this could have been that event, right? But yeah, Sumino being removed somewhat off screen, like, yeah, doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth, personally speaking. But, anyways, that's what happens. And, you know, uh, so Rex also, again, snaps his fingers and erases Riko and Kinjiro in front of Hoeru, and that just left Mashiro and Hoeru to fight. So again, this is when Mashiro takes the powers of destruction from Goodiburn, takes it into himself and tries to defeat um, Rex by himself. So what uh, Mashiro does again, like now that his powers are multiplied with the power of destruction, so he tries to free. So he freezes Rex in place, and using his finisher, so punches a huge hole in the ground and basically dives into the center of the earth with Rex with him, basically self destructing. Now, this was a maneuver that I remember from King Oger, at least in the first half, when, you know, the initial boss of the Bugnarak, so, like, uh, so the King Ogres, like, drive him into the center of the planet and defeat him, but they were able to escape just in time. Again, Mashiro's plan was to dive straight into the center of the earth with Rex, destroying both of them to save everyone. He does succeed, and again, using his godly powers actually before that. So he restores everything to normal, right? So all that destruction was undone, and then he defeats Rex. Okay. Now, there's still one more problem. Fire Candle. So again, at that point, so Fire Candle has absorbed Vidar's powers, and even Rex, recognizes that and tries to get him on his side. You're already a calamity, basically. Why not join forces with me? And again, Fire Candle also says, no, go suck it somewhere else, basically, and then tries to take power from Rex himself. He does so and consumes it, and now he has this brand new form that, I don't know, like, is part calamity. But looking at the helmet, uh, it actually has like a ranger like visor and would probably be reminiscent of like Geki Ranger's Dio, in a way. At least that's how I see it. But yeah, uh, so Fire Candle, by absorbing the powers of Vidar and Rex, gains this new Sentai like form. But again, like his armor still makes him some sort of a monster. Anyhow, we're gonna get to Fire Candle in the final episode. So we can safely say that it ends here a little bit. So now, Hoeru is left as the final winner of the number one battle through technicality. So, again, with Rex basically erasing Ryugi and Sumino, and Mashiro sacrificing himself, so there's no one else left to fight for Hoeru. And Tegasword declares that Hoeru is the final winner when all of the Sentai rings just, go straight to him. But this isn't what Hoeru wanted. Like, he's even telling the rings, like, no, 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 don't come near me. Like, he doesn't like what's happening, obviously. And, like, there's actually, like, a dramatic slow motion when Tegasor tries to point Hoeru as the final winner. Like, no! Basically, that's Hoeru's reaction. He didn't want to win this way, you know. But again, there's still one more problem. Fire Candle. And now we get to this final one-on-one between Fire Candle and Hoeru in the final episode. That would be next week. Okay? So I'm really excited to see how Gozyuger concludes. Now, I understand that there have been talks that Gozyuger was supposed to have 50 episodes. Maybe we get episode 50 as some sort of like either a movie or a V Cinema exclusive. But we're gonna end with episode 49 with Gozyuger. So again, it's a battle that has been, I don't know, like going on for so long. But anyways, I'm excited to see the finale of Gozyuger. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section. As always, please do leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. This has been Philip, and I'll see you in the next video. Number 1.